it seems to me that the church universal, or a church that has gone down through the ages from thousands of years ago, is in a better philosophical and epistemological position to say what's the correct authoritative interpretation than something like Sola Scriptura that doesn't take church history seriously.
Well, again, I would disagree with that. Because Protestants do, in fact, take church history seriously. In fact, a lot of the church history books I have, for example, the 8-volumed Philip Schaff church history book, Protestant scholar right there, that deals with it, Bruce L. Shelley, which is a recent one that's currently being revised and is used in seminaries. Again, a Protestant church historian, and is being used in Protestant seminaries to study church history. So there are plenty of church history works and books that are out there, and it is very knowable. And if you read the writings of Martin Luther, that he himself puts it that we should examine, indeed, the early church fathers. Even the Smelkhead articles points out that they are an authority, but they're not the ultimate authority. So there are plenty of Protestants who are interested in church history. In fact, a recent church history book that deals only with the 2nd century just came out from Michael J. Kruger, where he points out that definitely you can find the 2nd century is a justification by faith alone and sola scriptura culture in the early church at that point when we do a historical survey. So it's quite clear once we do see that there are Protestants that are into church history, that that's been the case, especially since the time of the Reformation. There's just, of course, some rotten bad apples that fall off, just like there are some that are rotten bad apples in other parts of religion. So that being said, let's get back to the point of the debate. Let's get back to the thesis of the debate about our Roman Catholics are brothers.
Well, hold on, not so fast, not so fast.
But wait a minute, we do have to go back to the
because
topic.
I do think this is important.
But the thesis is about our Roman Catholics are brothers and sisters in Christ.
We're talking about interpretation. What's an authoritative interpretation? I think that the Church Universal has a good say in that when taking history, and not just the first few centuries. I don't know why you're focused on that, because if there's a line of tradition, a regula fide that goes, yes, it goes back to the early apostles, but it goes after that with the contemporaries. Why can't it go into the 2nd and 3rd and 4th and 5th centuries? I don't see why you discount all but the first few centuries of the church.
I'm not discounting the first few centuries. I'm even saying that the first few centuries agree with me and disagree that the church is the ultimate interpreter. I'll give you the quote from Sterling Jerusalem, for he himself is basically telling people, hey, don't just take our interpretation. He himself says this when he's writing in his catechetical lectures. He says, for concerning the divine and holy mysteries of the faith, not even a casual statement must be delivered without the Holy Scriptures, nor must we be drawn aside by mere plausibility and artifices of speech. Even to me who tell you these things, give not absolute credence, unless thou receive the proof of the things which I announce from the divine Scriptures. For this salvation which we believe depends not on ingenious reasoning, but on demonstration of Holy Scriptures. Catechetical Lectures 4.17. So that's where we have one citation, and I can have plenty, but again, we're getting away from the main topic of the thesis and we need to get back on track. So the issue of our Roman Catholics are brothers in Christ. Well, again, if you want to have a second debate, if you want to have a second debate, we can certainly schedule a Sola Scriptura debate. But concerning the issue, we talked about the fact that the Catechism itself mentions that the Eucharist is a propitiatory sacrifice, that you cannot be saved unless you are baptized in water, and that in order to continue to be justified, to be saved, you must do.
How do you know your interpretation is true?
My interpretation is true of what?
How do you know your interpretation is not taken allegorical or literal? How do you differentiate between an allegorical and a literal interpretation, or some other way to interpret that? Don't you need some authority?
Correct, and that's why I went to the Catholic scholars. I told you one of them, his name being John Anthony O'Brien, and he interprets that basically not only does this mean that it is a propitiatory sacrifice, but even says that the priest that is getting the bread, he says, quote, "No wonder that the name which spiritual writers are especially fond of applying to the priest is that of alter Christos, for the priest is and should be another Christ."